And we're live. It is good to be here. Welcome to the Healthcare Leadership Show. This is Marion Spears Carr, and I have my guest, Todd Dunn. Happy Tuesday. Glad to see you, Todd. Glad to have you on
Thank
the
you.
show. For those of you who are watching the show for the first time, this is my weekly interview show where I bring amazing people in my network on the show to talk about the work that they're doing in healthcare and a lot of other areas and to just share their knowledge with you. If you're watching live, let us know in the comments. We want to know where you're watching. And if you watch the replay, we would love to know that as well. Our topic today, and we had the screen up there for a moment, but our topic today is how to deliver effective and impactful transformation in healthcare. And Todd, my guest, is one of the leading thought leaders in healthcare transformation. He's been identified and recognized by Modern Healthcare Magazine, a whole lot of other areas. He's a CEO of a company called Accurate Medical. Todd, introduce yourself. Thank you for being on the show. You're a good friend of mine. You live in my area where I grew up, and I live in the state you're from. So we've switched places. But Todd, introduce yourself to the audience, and we'll get the conversation going.
Thanks for the time. It's always good to see you. It's often tricky to introduce yourself. I would say that I'm someone who's relentlessly passionate about transformation, whether it is directly at the bedside or at the business model level, at the process level. It's what I've focused on for a very long time, Marion. I cared very deeply about people's voices, whether it's the frontline clinical teams or someone managing databases, and how do we effectively put systems in place to harness their voices to drive transformation. And you and I've had this conversation. It was kind of fun when we talked about, I consider innovation a verb, to innovate.
Yep.
And you innovate to get what you want, which is transformation. So I think that from a professional perspective sums me up. It's what I really love to do. And as you know, I'm passionate about healthcare and interacting with other amazing people like you.
Well, glad to have you on the show. And Todd and I met. I got to hear him speak at a McGuire Woods event a few years ago in my hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was just completely taken by how he focuses on this idea of innovation is important, but what we're really trying to achieve is transformation. And if you think about it, that's the work that needs to continue to take place. And so Todd and I have talked a great deal about it, and that's what the topic's about. Again, if you're watching live, let us know in the comments. Hopefully we can see them. There was a little problem with that capability last year or last week. But Todd, tell us a little bit about this idea around why it's so important that leaders, healthcare leaders, need to look at innovation as a component of what they're trying to achieve, and why transformation should be the goal, and why that's the critical piece. Start with that, and then let's just jump into some examples of what that would look like for healthcare leaders.
When I say this, I never would want it to come across as critical, but more of a critique, because I lived in an innovation role for a very long time. And for the longest time, I believe, Marion, that innovation was seen as this kind of sexy, flashy thing that a team over on the side would do. It was, whether it's AI or whether it was a cool app, it seemed to me that that was such a focus. It was a branding focus, which I completely understand, but it was also more of a flashy, shiny, object-driven type thing. And I think every type discipline goes through an evolution. So I don't want to be critical of it. But a few years ago, I started sitting and thinking about, wait a minute, what does 2.0 look like? And it kind of hit me that innovation really is a verb. It's what we do. Is it the fact that we go to the front line in an OR and learn and observe? Is that we ride along with the paramedics, or we go into homes? That's one verb. We go see. The other thing is we document and test assumptions. We can talk about that in a minute. I think the principles of medical discovery need to apply to innovation. And the reason that we want transformation, from my perspective, is that's what our customer wants, whether it's a customer of Accurint Medical or whether it's a nurse or a doctor in an intensive care unit. They want things transformed that leans against a problem they're trying to solve or a friction they're trying to remove. That's why I think the distinction needs to happen. And underlying all of that, to make it effective at scale, you have to have a system.
And you and I've talked about that quite a bit. And I love the fact that you point out that leaders tend to chase that shiny object, which you just hit on. And I think this idea of a systemic approach to changing what needs to take place and seeing it from that level, from that perspective. And by the way, Michael Young's checking in from San Diego, one of our buddies. Michael, glad to have you for watching live. The reason we ask, by the way, just so you'll know, the reason we want to know that you're there is because the whole idea of this show is to connect with you, the audience, connect with you and connect these incredible people in my audience, my network. Most of everybody that comes on my show are my friends. So like Todd and everybody. So we want to know you're there. Melissa Winans is checking in from North Texas. Melissa, good to see you in the comments. But let's go back to what we were just talking about. What do you believe are some of the barriers that leaders place in their own minds, I guess? What keeps them from looking at it from a systemic perspective? What are some of the barriers that are causing a lot of healthcare leaders not to look at it from that perspective? And how can we change that?
I think one of the main barriers, and I empathize with the leaders who have allocated budgets and time to innovative things. I think one of the barriers is actually history. There was a large consulting firm a few years ago, Marion, that did a survey of thousands of CEOs around the world. And 83% of those CEOs said they were disappointed in the results that they were getting from their innovation efforts. But what really struck me was that 94% of them believed that innovation was essential to their future. And so I thought, wait a minute. It's probably because they've been promised a lot. The pitches have looked really good and been very convincing. And then they wasted tens of millions of dollars or a lot of time or lost a competitive position. I think that's the barrier, is the history of it. I think the accelerant behind it is that they recognize the necessity of it. So then you sit in that middle and you think there's a lot of tension between those two polar thoughts. So what would be the bridge between those two things? The necessity of innovating and also the necessity of not wasting time and money and being fiduciarily responsible while you innovate. That bridge is a transformation system, in my opinion.
Really important point. And I think one of the things that you and I have talked about, and you and I, and again, I keep saying you and I have had this conversation a lot. This is the area that we get so excited about when we talk, is why does the industry not change? What are the challenges they're facing the industry? And for those of you who are watching this show for the first time, my world is executive recruiting, leadership development, and business development for healthcare companies across the United States. And now actually about to do a partnership with a Israel-based company. But innovation as a catalyst for transformation is critical to all those ventures. Todd, one of the things that we've talked about is that oftentimes healthcare leaders place innovation into departments. In other words, all innovation that come from IT or chief technology officer's role. But one of the things you talk about is the engagement and involvement of everyone in the organization to create those environments where transformation can take place. Talk a little bit about why are we, if we place the emphasis on IT or a specific department, we're missing out on building on the knowledge base that we have throughout the organization. Talk a little bit about how, from your perspective, building the stakeholder group and getting ideas and engagement from a lot of different people and buy-in is so important.
One of the things that hit me years ago, I was at Google, and a friend of mine was running Google at work at the time. And I asked him, hey, who's the chief innovation officer? And he laughed at me, took me off guard a little. He said, Todd, everyone is an innovator. The key is figuring out how to make that level of energy effective. When I was at one of my large companies that I worked for, a really large company, there was a note that went out to everyone that said, give us your good ideas. And I thought, well, do you think anyone would actually give you a bad idea or something that they thought was a bad idea? It kind of cracked me up, but it went out to 40-something thousand people, and they were going to award 5 ideas. And it really struck me, Marion, that the problem was, what did a good idea look like? If I was submitting an idea, how did I know that it would fit the criteria? And then that was what was missing. The answer to your question is, if you want to solve problems at scale, I think, one, you have to be willing as a leadership team to value coins in the couch and dollars in the dryer. If you can add up a bunch of coins and find a bunch of dollars, then you win. The reason that I say that is, I think when you talk about innovation being seen as maybe a technology thing, it's a story that we tell ourselves. Or transformation is AI now, it's the buzzword. And what I'm suggesting is all of those things matter as long as there's a system to ensure that you're making great decisions. Let me give you a perfect example. We were working on something when I was at one of the big healthcare systems, and we decided that we were going to put in a structure called a challenge structure, where the team would get together inside of a team. Think about this. This is the N of one team. They would get together and they would look at all the things they're struggling with, and they would make a problem definition. They would ask people for ideas to solve that agreed upon problem, and there would be criteria to judge the ideas, and there would be a promise of next step for the winning ideas. That's the structure. That structure can go across an entire company at a certain level, and it can harness coins in the couch and dollars in the dryer. If you find those coins in the couch and dollars in the dryer, you can reinvest those into the bigger, riskier things. The reason that this is so important is because things are moving so fast, and they're going to keep moving fast, that if you don't have a systematic way of transforming processes at the front line, language, tools, and methods to redefine your business models, you're going to be a has-been story, or you're going to be a company that always struggles to stay ahead. But it's not because your people aren't brilliant. Not at all. They all are. It's because you don't have a system of language, tools, and methods that defines what transformation looks like, and it defines how innovation has to get executed.
One of the things that, again, I love what you just said, because this idea of that definition and making sure that it's agreed upon definition, that everybody understands it, right? Like it's I think if you polled leaders right now and said, what does healthcare transformation look like? You'd get 1,000. If you polled 1,000 people, it'd be 1,000 answers, right? I would agree.
All day long. Even within a single company, even within the same company, you would have that problem. But if you had that language problem on the floor where a nurse or a doctor said stat and no one knew what stat meant, Marion, you're bringing up a powerful point.
Yep.
The language, the methods, the tools of medicine create unity. You diagnose before you prescribe. Labs give us criteria of the condition. I believe that a great transformation system harnesses what is already present in medicine. We're after evidence. We always say assumptions blind, hypothesis guide. That's why we diagnose before we prescribe. And it's the same for a great transformation system. But here's the interesting thing. If you were to go to any hospital in this country and say, show me your sepsis protocol, bink, they would be able to show you their sepsis protocol.
Immediately.
Hey,
yep.
Show me what happens when someone shows up at the emergency department under cardiac arrest. Bink. They show it to you. Everybody knows their role. Now go to those same systems and say, show me your transformation playbook. If it's not documented in the same way, I think there's a wonderful opportunity to rethink how we talk about, and your point, execute transformation, and how people understand the language, the definitions, just like you said, the tools, and it's a behavior at different levels, and it's a knowledge set at different levels, which is what we worked on at Atrium. I called it Design for People at Intermountain Healthcare and Design for Impact at Atrium Advocate. And that led us to bringing in Accurate Medical at Advocate. It led us to revamping dialysis business models and blood draws. But that system is, I would argue, the root cause of why I have the honor of being at Accurate Medical now.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about it. Tell us, I interrupted you there, but tell us, and we probably should have led with this, but this is where you and I have been friends for so long. We just start talking. You recently, not too long ago, became the CEO of Accurate Medical. Talk about how that company, what you're doing at that company to build these things for these organizations, what you guys, the problem that you solve, and how y'all have gone about it. Love for you to talk about that a minute.
That's great. And right in the heart of the conversation is it started through our model. My team and I spent time in the ORs and the ICUs, interviewing, observing, modeling the business model of the kidney. I was with a CRNA in the OR, and she said to me, Todd, look at what we've done to digitize the vital signs of the heart and the lungs. And then she said, look under the edge of the bed and see what we've done for the kidney. And we still use at scale a gravity-fed catheter urine collection system that was initially launched in 1936 to manage a vital organ. There's no digital assistance in understanding the performance of the kidney. You go to the ICU, it's the same thing. And then we rely on a blood test. It's called a serum creatinine blood test that only tells you if your kidneys are already in trouble. What we've done, just as I would argue has been done for the heart and lungs, we've built a monitoring platform for the kidney. We automate urine flow. We actively clear the line so you never get retrograde urine. You always know if the kidney's vital sign, urine, is telling you enough about the kidney, like minute by minute. We take that, we digitize that information, we compare it against a standard, and then we integrate it into the electronic medical record. With our catheters, we have very interesting, highly advanced catheters so that they're intelligent. They're not just a tube. We use a monitor just like you have for the heart or the lungs, and we digitize the kidney, and we give you the fluid status of the kidney so that the ICU teams can make the right decisions, or so that the teams in the OR can know what's going on with perfusion for the kidney. And why is that really important? Because fluid status of a patient is a grand predictor of a better outcome. We just tell you way early. I'll sum it up with this. We're a sophisticated platform for early detection of kidney distress. We have a monitor and we have catheters. We prevent CAUTIs. We give you early alerts to acute kidney injury, which is actually now CMS harm. CMS in August of 24 said acute kidney injury is an official harm, just like CAUTI, just like a fall, just like a bed ulcer. This is the same type harm. We help you prevent that as much as possible.
Why do you think it's taken so long to
Mm.
address that particular piece
Mm.
of the process? It's interesting when you talked
Mhm.
about that, and then I'm thinking
Mhm.
about my dad who never had to go on dialysis, but was having some kidney issues in his latter years. And I remember,
Mhm.
like you said, he was hooked up to a 12 lead EKG. He was being monitored, all these different things, but yet it required a nurse or a tech to come in the room,
Mhm.
look at his output, write it down, or put it in the keypad. Okay, he has so many cc's of fluid.
Yep.
And then, like you said, the blood test, which talks about like what's the percentage of how his kidneys are functioning. He's like, why did it
Yep.
take so long?
Mm.
That's just a question that I was interested. Why did it take so long to somebody to go, wait a minute, there's a problem to be
Mhm.
solved that we need to solve?
I think there are a few reasons. There have been doctors and nurses questioning why do they have to use a gravity-fed tube for years.
Mm-hmm.
I th There are a few things I think that come to mind. It's the lack of a system. How many people have actually gone and seen it in the OR, the ICU? How many systems have actually pulled their acute kidney injury data and have it on a dashboard so that everyone is aware that this is a harm? It's a
Mm-hmm.
patient harm. If you get an acute kidney injury in the inpatient side, you're multiple times more likely to have chronic kidney disease for life. No patient deserves that. No doctor, nurse wants that to happen to you. And so if you think about a system, there's the just the pragmatic bedside process and tools for that. You need to go see it. You need to pull the data that says because we use outdated technology, it leads to acute kidney injuries and CODIs, et cetera. And then you
Mm-hmm.
got to zoom out and say, what is this costing our system?
Yeah.
In last year, 2024, I have the data from 24, there were 3.2 million acute kidney injuries. That's one every 10 seconds. And that's by
Wow.
blood. That's by blood. Blood misses a
Mm-hmm.
large percentage of them because your kidneys have to be harmed before the blood shows the creatinine. And so I
Yeah.
just think if you think about a system, the way we discovered it is we looked at the data, we looked at the business model, we looked at the bedside processes and technologies, and we deeply empathize with the people in the context of care when they said, I need something to help me manage and understand a patient's fluid status more. And that when that CRNA and the anesthesiologist in the room said, just find us something, please. We want to do a better job. Then you know what? I was fortunate enough to work for an amazing system, and the the leadership there cares so much about quality of care. They care about everyone having the same access to the quality care. And then they're
Mm-hmm.
willing to innovate to that end. Why? Because we had a culture that wanted to do better by people, and we had a system that drove wise decisions. And so without that, it's hard to find these types of things, is my real point, Marion.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have a system, how can you repeat what you just did?
Yeah, and I think sharing that, it goes back to the core of our conversation. And by the way, if you're just joining us in the last few minutes, you're watching the Healthcare Leadership Show with Marion Spears Carr. That's me, and this is
Hmm.
my weekly live show. Not really a podcast. We want to reach people on LinkedIn, reach our network. If you're watching live, let us know you're there. Or if you watch the replay, let us know in the comments. We always respond. And if you got questions for Todd in our last few minutes, either about the specific work that he's doing at Accurate Medical, what we just talked about, but also in a bigger picture, and to get back to our core discussion around the difference between innovation and transformation, and then this
Mhm.
creating the systemic approach. So my audience, Todd, please
Mhm.
post those in the comments. If you got questions, please let us know. We'll get Todd to answer them. Todd, so here's my question to you now. So my audience is healthcare leaders from all different walks of life, large
Mhm.
organizations to small rural organizations all across the Southeast, the Midwest, you name it,
Mhm.
all across the country.
Yeah.
And so if let's say I'm a
Mm.
hospital leader in a small community hospital in the
Mhm.
Midwest or in the Carolinas where we're from, or Georgia, wherever it might be.
Yeah.
And I want to get started. I want to start changing how I look at transformation and start the process of creating a more systemic approach. Where do they need to start? What does that look like?
Yeah. My initial
Not a
gut
fair
reaction
question.
because I love it so much is, man, just call me, I'll explain it.
Yeah,
And
okay.
by the way,
Call Todd Dunn, yeah.
I don't know if I told you, and I don't want to say that in an arrogant way.
Yeah.
I've done it for so long, and I know what not to do. That might be more valuable
Yep.
than knowing what to do.
Yep. Okay.
I might have told you there's a publishing group called Taylor and Francis that's going to publish my book this year called The Innovator's Journey, which is really just a handbook of how to build and drive transformation efforts inside of an organization. The most important thing that you got to start with, you nailed this very early and might not have seen the power of what you said. Let's define what it is. Don't worry about posters. Don't say we're going to innovate. If you had something you needed to transform, what is it? Do you need to transform your business model because you're losing money on the clinic side? Look at the entity. If I'm in the C-suite or C-suite plus one, I'm looking at the entities that are struggling. I'm looking at the entities that are doing well, and I'm mapping out the business models, the portfolio of models. And then I would have the language, tools, and methods for doing business model portfolio management. If I know I have to be more efficient,
Yep.
I have to be, I wouldn't say it. I would put in a system for harnessing voices to solve problems at the front line. We had a team at Intermountain Healthcare that was spending so much time refreshing databases, manually refreshing of databases. And when we put this challenge out, there were two people, David and Angela, raise their hand and say, we can solve this. We can move it from 4 hours to 30 minutes if you'll just give us 2 or 3 days to work together. And the leader of that team was wise enough to say, yeah. Why? Because their demand was growing at 30 or 40% a year, but they weren't allowed to add heads. That's a problem. That's the coins in the couch, dollars in the dryer problem. But you need a system for harnessing those ideas toward a measured and agreed upon problem. That's what I would do. Define it, assess your business model portfolio, and then implement a system that harnesses voices in a very effective way. And this is not give us your good ideas. This is give us the ideas to solve this problem based on the criteria of judging the problem. That would be a really fun dialogue, Marion, about how to do it. But that's where I would start. No fanfare, pragmatic. This is a business system of transformation. It's not flavor of the week. It's not a shiny thing. It has to be executed just like a sepsis model.
I love it, and that's a great place to start to wrap up. I love that idea, and I think if you're listening live or watching this replay, I hope you get that takeaway, and hopefully we're going to be able to create a tip. Another one of one of my circles checking in, Steve Camber is checking in from Dallas. Glad he's in the innovative world of transformation when it comes to IT, and so Steve, glad to have you in the audience. Good to see him in a couple of weeks when I'm speaking at a conference in Texas. Todd, last point, and we're going to wrap up. How can people connect with you?
LinkedIn's always a simple one, but you can reach me in my current position at tdunn, TDUNN at Accuryn.com, ACCURYN.com. Or if it's just on a personal level, hit me at my Gmail, todd.dunn@gmail.com.
Yeah, and we'll put those in the comments after the show. Todd, thank you for being on the show. And I've been featuring a lot of books, so keep me updated on your book. We'll get you back on the show to talk about that. Awesome. You're glad to have you, Todd. And I say publicly, having you in my circle really matters to me. So thank you so much. And I love our exchanges and I love to keep up with North Carolina through you. So thank you for being up there, being keeping an eye out on Lake Norman area for me. We're going to wrap up. For those of you who are watching the Healthcare Leadership Show, Thank you for being on in the audience. Coming up on Thursday, special time at 12:15, a pop-up. Scott Becker from Becker's Healthcare is going to be joining me again to talk about and give us an update on his book that'll be coming out later this year. So join us at 12:15 this Thursday. Also next week, we will have on the show some other key incredible people. Cliff Norman and his wife Jane Norman, they're some of the top quality management people in the world. He has a new book that's come out called Quality is an Organizational Strategy. Going to be talking about that book. And then the following week, we have Cheryl Norman coming in from Conduit Health to talk about their work in providing care for a platform for patients after hours. So we're glad those shows coming up. If you're interested in being on my LinkedIn Live show, drop me a message and I'll share how that works. Otherwise, have a great Tuesday. Happy February. Todd, thank you for being on the show. We will see you all again soon.
Thanks, Marion.
You're welcome, man. I love having you on the show, brother.
Same.